Hey everyone, today we are looking at the concept of supply. We'll start with a definition, that being that supplies the different quantities of goods and services that producers are willing and able to sell at different prices. We need to know our definitions. So it's similar to demand in that producers have to be both willing and able. All right, so they're quite similar definitions. We do need to know them. All right, the law of supply. Again, similar to demand, but a bit different. So the law is, as price increases, the quantity supplied increases. So we've got this upward sloping curve. And of course, the reverse of that, as price decreases, quantity supplied decreases. We move down along this curve. Now, people ask, well, why would that be? Why would they supply more when the price increases? And that is because firms, producers, are profit driven. So the higher the price, the more it's worth them producing it, right? The price often goes up due to increases in demand. So if they can produce what people are wanting, they can get those higher prices, which means more profits. Okay, we have our non-price determinants of supply. So again, we've got a little word to remember that helps you remember the different non-price determinants. So that's a B. So the word we have is insects. So I suggest you take this down as a bit of a summary, a way to remember these. So indirect taxes, number of firms, subsidies, expectations of future price, costs of production, technological change, and shocks. Right, I will go through each of these in a bit more detail so that we understand them, but we want to remember insects, and that will help us think of what these are. If you just try to remember how many are there? 7 by themselves, it's going to be a bit hard. So you have this word insects, it'll help you out. It's a bit of a shortcut in your brain. We need to remember that just like demand, price does not shift the curve. And that is because price is on the axis. So we already know how much they're willing and able to supply at all the different prices. It's only if that changes, if they're willing and able to supply different amounts at each price. Okay, we'll look at indirect taxes first. So this is a definition. You will need to know a definition of this. Taxes on the spending on goods and services by consumers, and they're collected by the supplier on behalf of the government. So that means they're collected by the supplier and then they give that money to the government. One of the most well-known indirect taxes that we have in Australia is a tax on alcohol. So I guess as a society, we don't want people to drink too much, so we put a tax on it so people drink a bit less, stay a bit more under control. So we'll see how this works. This works by affecting the costs of production, right? So we'll look at a few of the different costs of production involved in beer. You've got to have the brewery, right? That costs money. You've got the bottles, costs money. The ingredients, what actually goes inside the bottle. The labor, the people doing the work, distributing it, all the trucks and travel, whatnot. Then what we're adding to it is for every bottle they sell, they pay all these costs, but now they also have to pay a tax to the government. So it might be per litre sold or per bottle sold, whatever. All right, so the indirect tax will change the costs of production. Right? So if it costs more to produce, they will be less willing and able to produce it at each price because they will make less profit at each price. Right? A $10 beer at a pub becomes less profitable if the tax that the pub has to pay to the government goes up. Right? So they're less likely to want to sell that. Okay, next, the number of firms. This one's, pretty straightforward. If you have more sellers, you have increased supply. So more sellers, more firms. Fewer sellers, decreased supply. More sellers, you got more companies willing and able to supply at each price. So, for example, food trucks, right? You get food trucks coming out. They're going to compete to gain more of the market share. And generally what's going to happen is that the price will get lowered, right? That's what happens when we have competition. We get lower prices. Okay, subsidies. These are really the opposite of a tax. So subsidies are grants provided by the government to firms. They're mainly aimed at lowering production costs and increasing output. So they want more of this sold, so they pay them. So solar panels is a famous example of where our government puts on subsidies. So again, we'll look at the cost of production. You got your factory, you've got your materials, your labor, your distribution of them, right? Then what happens is they minus the cost of production because they give them money for each solar panel they produce. So when they produce a solar panel, they give them an amount of money, so it reduces their costs of production. So the introduction of or change to a subsidy will change the costs of production. They will be more willing and able to sell because each unit will be more profitable than it was before, right? Because their costs of production are now less. Expectations of future price. If an increase in price is expected, more supply will be provided by profit incentivized producers. So we had this was a non-price determinant of demand as well, but here it's about the suppliers, what they're willing to do. So an example of this, when the World Cup, the Soccer World Cup comes to a country, people expect that there's going to be this huge influx of tourists coming to watch the games, and that's what happens. So you can think of businesses, they think all these people are going to come, the prices are going to go up. Think of accommodation, right? If you've got a hotel, you think more people are going to come. Someone else will look at that and think, well, I should have a hotel. I should sell a room in my house, rent out a room in my house. So they'll do that, and then there'll be more supply. There'll be more firms willing and able to sell their accommodation at each price because they'll come in thinking they're going to make more and more money. All right. Cost of production. This is a bit of a catch-all because any change to the cost of production, you've heard me mention it already a bunch of times, a change to the cost of production will impact how much is supplied. So got a strange little picture here. That's Willy Wonka and the Oompa Loompas from the first Willy Wonka movie. So best as I can tell, these Oompa Loompas are slaves of Willy Wonka. So if you read the book, watch the movie, you understand that he goes off to Oompa Loompa land, brings back the Oompa Loompas, just like they did with the slave trade hundreds of years ago. And I'm not sure they're allowed to leave because something they say about the chocolate factory is that no one ever goes in, no one ever goes out. So these poor Oompa Loompas are slaves. Now, the way I figured that would have reduced his costs of production a lot. You take labor costs down from at least minimum wage down to zero. You're reducing your costs of production quite a bit, right? So simple things we need to know. Lower costs of production equals an increase in supply, right? They're more willing and able to sell at each price if the cost of producing each unit is lower. Now, some real examples that we'll look at. Here we've got a microchip and we've got oil. These are big components in other goods. So if the price of microchips comes down, which has happened pretty dramatically over the past few decades, then the supply of electronics increases. And that has also happened quite dramatically over the last few decades. We also get changes in the price of oil from time to time. For instance, I remember at the start of COVID when no one was demanding oil, the price went down a lot because no one was driving, no one was flying planes, right? I could buy petrol for under $1 a litre for a while. So that changes the price of oil, and oil or petrol or diesel is used to produce almost everything. So any sort of plastic, that's from oil. Anything that needs to be transported, that's using petrol, right? So the price of oil has a huge effect on how much is supplied. Right. Next, technological change. An increase in technology means more efficient production methods, reducing costs of production. So again, we're talking about costs of production. So think about something like ChatGPT, AI. Using AI can cut down the amount of labor that a business will need to hire. So they might lower their costs of production by using AI tools. So automating more basic tasks will do that. So that's an example of technological change. So is this is a robot, I guess, used in manufacturing in a factory. So when we started developing these things, we took a lot of people out of factories. There used to be production lines for, say, cars, and you'd have all these teams of people working on each part. Now you see a lot more things like this, the robots going in and doing their bit instead. So they reduce costs of production, which increase the supply of things. And shock is an unexpected event that changes the supply of a good. So we've got a few examples here. This represents a drought. This is what the land can start to look like when there is zero water there. It really dries up. So that will reduce the supply of something. If you have a drought, that means we've got less agricultural produce. Another type of shock, this represents a cyclone that we had up in Queensland. So there were a couple, since I've been an adult, where they've wiped out a whole bunch of banana crops in North Queensland, and therefore the price of bananas has gone crazy. So $13.98. This is about 15 years ago. Bananas now are still maybe $3 to $4 a kilo. So the price went up massively because the supply went down so much. They became more scarce, therefore more expensive. War will do this. I can't remember where I took this picture from. It could be Afghanistan, it could be the Middle East, I'm not sure. But a war isn't, I guess, an unexpected event that changes the supply. So they're going to supply less when they're at war. And it can be a positive event too. So if you have a really perfect weather conditions, then you can increase the supply of agricultural produce. Okay, and lastly, I want to talk about how we explain a shift of supply. So the type of terminology we use. This is a supply curve, upward sloping. Hopefully you remember why it's upward sloping. Price and quantity, same as we saw with demand. So an example here, due to the Australian government subsidising solar panels, costs of production decrease and supply increases from S to S1. Right, perfect. We've given some understanding of the non-price determinant, and we've referred to our diagram. It is clear, right? That's the way we explain these. So make sure you get that down as an example. And that is all we need to know for this part of the course. So hopefully you've got good notes. We'll work through these things in class. Thank you.